I can't think of a single Christian outlet, a single Christian pulpit that has really effectively spoken out against trans ideology and spoken out against woke culture in America on a regular basis. Let me pair back and just say there are few of them out there, because I think that's a safer bet. But especially for those who have big platforms, there are very few who are actually willing to stand up and say we need to eradicate the ideology of transgenderism. But there was one man who just over the weekend did so, and his name is Mark Driscoll. In an epic message about Elijah, he stepped out from his pulpit and began to deal with effeminate men. He began to deal with transgenderism and the blight that it is upon society. So here's just a little bit of what he had to say.
Let me start by saying that we live in a day that is very much like the days of Elijah. And we will jump into Elijah in 1 Kings 17, and we'll study right through to 2 Kings 2 over the course of 4 months. But his day, like our day, was war on every front. Political war, sexual war, gender wars, spiritual wars, parental wars, culture wars, educational wars. We live in an insane day. We're arguing over birthing people, pregnant people, people who can menstruate, gender pronouns. We've got males and female sports. We recently had in Wales a 12-year-old man who a grown man who identifies as a 12-year-old girl competing against little girls in cricket and hurting them. And no one would say anything because they didn't want to offend him. All of a sudden, mental health is a civil right. In addition, we're not allowed to just have our children go to the bathroom without guarantee that there won't be some predator there who has gender dysphoria and confusion. We have drag shows for kids all the way down to babies this week in the UK. Anytime a child is in a sexualized environment, it's not entertainment, it's grooming. In addition, if you say anything about it, there is cancel culture where they come to deplatform you and crucify you. It comes under the auspices of social justice, equity, systematic racism, patriarchy, and victimhood. Victims of nothing, I would add. In addition, they would say that since there is no visible leader, this is not a genuine movement, and since there is no visible teacher, there is no legitimate movement. And I would say there is clearly a leader. It's just not someone who is physical.
So listen, I spoke last week on the show about the silent majority. Now, the silent majority, if anybody in America, is Christians, because we still make up the majority of people in America who claim to be Christians. I know that that number is incredibly fallacious. It's not a right number, but somewhere in there is a real number of real professing, believing Christians in America. And the fact that we are so silent about these issues is insane. I called for the eradication of the ideology of transgenderism because I think we're closer than ever before right now with things that are happening in my home state of Tennessee and then in other states around our nation with the banning of gender mutilation for children in different states, but also because of the awareness about this and the widespread nature of this mental illness, or at least this social contagion that is afflicting people. We're creating more and more awareness about this, and as a result, we are pushing back against it, and things are beginning to change. Recently, Michael Knowles got a lot of heat at a CPAC event for calling for this very same thing, which is why I'm using the very same language. We need to eradicate transgenderism and its ideology as much as possible. And what I mean by that, just so that I am not misinterpreted, is that we need to love the person who has gender dysphoria and even love the person who has the social contagion, like rapid onset gender dysphoria. We need to love them with all of our heart, but love them enough to tell them the truth. The ideology must be eliminated until it becomes unthinkable to perform these kind of surgeries on young kids. Now, it is a different story to do this in adults, but still, when did we allow as a society organizations like Big Tobacco to sell products that would kill people and hurt them for the rest of their lives without at least putting incredible warning labels on them? Now, we've almost eradicated smoking as a kind of socially acceptable practice in America. Why? Because one person was willing to blow the whistle on an industry that was more interested in selling product than they were in actually protecting people. Now, the same thing is happening in our time, and we need men like Driscoll and others to stand against it and say this, that there is an organization that is more interested in pushing product especially upon young kids, than they are in actually the well-being of people. And if anybody needs to be standing up against this right now, it is Christians who will say this, that a man is a man and a woman is a woman. And I don't care about the social repercussions of this, because the social repercussions of the opposite are way too damning and damaging to us as a society. The societal decline that we are in is being exponentially expedited by things like this, and we must do something about it. For those who are espousing tolerance in the midst of all of this and staying silent, you are part of the problem. And I know, I get it. You know, Christians have been silent for so long because they're so threatened by being accused of being Jerry Falwell. They don't want to be considered the religious right of the 80s. And I get it to a certain extent. Those guys were so politically minded, and by that I mean corrupt and in bed with politicians, many of them, that I don't want that either. But if we're talking about political in the sense of changing our world, even from a policy standpoint, count me in. I want to be at the forefront of standing for policy procedures and, more importantly, doing this, making sure that the cure that we have is professed in all the world. Because at the end of the day, it is not tolerant, it is not loving to sit back while you have the answer for what people are experiencing and facing in a negative way in this society. If you have the answer to that, to hold it to yourself. If you have the cure for cancer and you keep it to yourself, you are not tolerant and you are not loving. There's nothing benevolent about that at all. So at the end of the day, I just want to encourage you that if you know the answer and you have the answer, even if you think that you might be flawed in some ways and you may not know how to communicate that answer to other people, but you know at least that there is an answer in the hope that you have in Christ and in His Word, then by all means, share it as far and as wide as you possibly can. Because there's too few pastors willing to deal with this issue like Driscoll is right now. And we need more and more and more if we're going to do it. Because we cannot allow in our time to let tolerance replace love. Because tolerance is killing people and damning them. The truth will help them. So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely want to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Indie Thinker come your way. Thanks for watching.